Good morning. I'm Michael with Wichita's 90.7 Way FM. Today's topic is about parenting, specifically parenting a strong-willed child. Joining me here in the studio is Wesley. He is with Asbury Counseling Center here in Wichita. Thank you so much for coming by today, Wesley.
Hey, appreciate being here. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Good. When we think about strong-willed children, that is an interesting topic. It's so interesting to me. There's some kids that are just so well-behaved. They just get along, just kind of go with the flow. Nothing really bothers them.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you have children, it seems like no matter what you tell them, they always want to do the opposite.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're going to have that in every family. There are kids that have different personalities. And I run into this challenge all the time. And a lot of the resources I get my information from is from Dan Siegel. He has a book called No Trauma Discipline, so that's kind of a little bit of what I'll be talking about today. But I really encourage, if you want a good book to go to that will kind of help you get started, No Trauma Discipline by Daniel Siegel and Tina Bryson. They're a really good book. I'd really recommend that. It's what I learned in my program and have been reading lately. But when it comes to parenting in general, because dealing with a strong-willed child, we look at a lot of the factors as we do with the parenting. And when I talk with parents about this, the first thing I always look at is kind of how they were parented, because you want to know the basis of kind of how you were raised. You're going to parent your kid the way you were parented.
That's true.
And so you may have had a good experience and you want to model that from your parents. Or you may have had a poor experience of what your parents did and you go, okay, I'm not going to do that. And so before we even began to talk about ways to deal with the strong-willed child, I always help the parents take an assessment test that kind of helps them get an idea of the type of parent they are. And a lot of them, when they look at that test and they look at the results and they realize that they're this way, they will see a correlation of how that was created when they grew up with their parents. And it's important to understand the way you parent, because if we are trying to discipline or if we are trying to move in a direction of parenting style that is different than how we were raised, it's going to seem a little foreign. And so the thing that I always encourage parents to do is to really begin to ask yourself these, typical questions. What was it like growing up with my family? What did my family teach me about parenting? What did they teach me about emotions? Was sadness okay in my family? Was it accepted? Was anger accepted? Was it okay? Was it looked down upon? These are important questions to know, because when you are dealing with your child, and let's say he presents an attitude of anger or frustration, if you grew up in a family where anger was not okay to express, then most likely, you're going to present that to him. And so it's very important for parents to first take a look at themselves to say, what type of parent are you? And are you okay with that? Because from that moment on, that's the basis that we can move on to help them decide on kind of the best way they want to handle their kids.
That's true. Wow. So that's extremely powerful, what you just mentioned about expressing emotions.
Yes. Emotions are very, I think are very important. When I talk with a lot of parents, emotions are difficult sometimes for people to deal with. I know we as parents are afraid of our kids having certain emotions. If our kid has an emotion of anger, we're scared about that emotion because we're like, hey, we don't want that to run away. We got to do something. If he gets angry, we got to shut that down. And yet, what I've learned through my experience in life, as well as what I've learned through my program, that emotions aren't bad. In fact, emotions are very needed. Emotions are a way to express what's going on in our lives. Anger and sadness, all those emotions are not wrong to have. But the problem becomes when those emotions hurt ourselves and other people, then that's something that we have to deal with. But again, going back to the lifestyle, how you were raised, if you grew up in a family where anger was not allowed to be expressed, then every time your child presents to you anger, if you are not aware of that, you are going to try, because of what you've learned, to shut that down. And so being able to kind of get parents together, say, what is the goal? What do you want to accomplish with your kid? And what do you hope to teach them is a great second step to start after them helping them see this is the type of parenting style that I have, and this is what I'm okay with, and this is what I'm not. But like you said earlier, emotions are very important, and sometimes we don't know how to deal with a kid's emotions. If a kid cries for a certain long time, we're like, oh my goodness, is that a bad thing? Is it bad for our kids to cry and just let them cry? Is it bad for my kid, to just get angry? And I tell parents, if your kid is getting angry, as long as he's not destroying things or hurting himself or other people, then let him have that anger. If a child is crying and they're very upset, as long as they're not hurting themselves or other people, let them have that emotion. Because that emotion, is a way for them to express what's going on. And the biggest challenge that I keep telling parents is be a parent. It's our job to be parents, but it's their job to be kids.
That's true.
It's our job to come alongside and help them understand what's going on inside their world.
That's true. Wow, this is very fascinating. If you're just joining us this morning on today's program, we are discussing about parenting, and we are specifically talking about parenting a strong-willed child. And
yes.
Just a moment ago, we were talking about emotions, allowing your child to express emotions in a healthy way. For example, if your child is expressing anger, let them express it as long as you said they're not hurting themselves or other people.
Yeah, because we know how to, at least I would say some of us adults know how to handle. We have the tools and the resource and the experience to be able to calm down our anger and our sadness. You got to understand, in a child's world, they don't have that brain development yet to understand how to handle that or even to know what this is. Wow. And so it's kind of unfair for us to sit here and put the expectation that they should know how to handle their emotions when, in honesty, our prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your forehead, that thinking part of your brain is not fully developed between 25 and 27. And so it's so important to understand that when a kid is going through an emotions, they most likely, more than not, they don't know what that emotion is or how to handle that. It's our job to teach them that this emotion is because of this, and this is how you work with it. And, that kind of goes into the other point of working with parents is I know a lot of parents have a lot of anxiety about dealing with parenting. They have a lot of stress about it. And my goal when working with parents is always try to be a better person, because you are only going to be as good as a parent as you are healthy in the inside. If you are healthy in the inside and your heart, is aligned and your, life with Christ is growing and you're feeling healthy, you're going to have more patience. You're going to have more grace.
That's true.
But if you're struggling with work and you have finance issues, marital issues, those things will play into your ability to parent.
Wow.
And with that, we want that ability to love and also, most importantly, to listen and to be able to take that time to sit in that emotion that they're having and really begin to walk them through that. But sometimes we don't do that because of the own issues we have in our lives. And the last thing we want to do is hear someone else complain when there are things in our lives that need work. And so self-care is huge and really important when becoming a parent, a compassionate parent who listens, gives grace, and learns to just really surround them with love.
Wesley, I think a lot of people deal with anxiety, like you mentioned, because I'm sure many people did not have a parent at home. They were raised by grandparents.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure they're dealing with a lot of anxiety. I don't know how to do this. They may be thinking, this is like working on a car. I don't know how to work on a car. I know how to put gas in it.
Exactly. And that's the number one question. What do I do for my kid? And here's the thing. There is not one answer to everything. Like what works for one family is not going to work for another.
That's good.
And that's why in your journey with learning to deal with your child, it's a journey that you and him are going to learn together. And that's something that you'll have to take the time to really expand your mind and be open to different ideas. Because like I said, there's not one specific way on how you should parent your kid. Now, there's some basics to it. And one of the basics I feel like is needed is being able to take care of yourself and really knowing where you came from. A lot of parents, they discipline out of fear. And then we talk about that anxiety. We don't want to discipline out of fear. We want to discipline when we are in a clear mind, because when we are anxious, when we are angry, when our kid is acting up for the 15th millionth time, we don't use our thinking brain the best way. We flip our lid, or our thinking brain comes offline, and all of a sudden our emotions, and we start to say things that we regret. And to some of us, that's normal because that's how we grew up. And so that's why it's important to evaluate your heart, to evaluate yourself and kind of how you were raised, to get an idea of just what type of person you are, and are you okay with that? And if you aren't, what are some things you want to change and grow?
That's true. I know many times I've known some people personally that they're afraid of just really being destructive with their anger, so they'll just withdraw.
Exactly.
And they won't talk to the person.
Exactly.
And that because they're afraid of themselves. So like you said, it's good to have self-care to work on yourself too.
Because if you are an individual who doesn't deal well with conflict, you're going to have a hard time dealing with your kids' conflict.
Wow.
If you have a trouble dealing with sadness within yourself, then you're not going to be able to learn how to understand or work with your kids' sadness. And so a lot of parenting, and I'm a true believer in this, a lot of parenting starts with self. It starts with you. Understanding who you are, who do you want to be, and working through the things that you have. Because, again, your kid's going to be as strong as you are. Mm-hmm. And the more stress and anxiety you have in your life, the less patient you'll be with your child.
Wow. That is so powerful. Well, we just have a few minutes left in this morning's program. This has been so great. I love what you said, just having that self-care. If we have someone listening and maybe thinking, Wesley, is it too late? I have a strong-willed child, but they're past the age of 5. Is it too late to turn things around?
It's never too late. I mean, the thing that we've learned with my program, as well as I think is really applicable to parenting, is that I remember our professors saying that between 70 and 75% of the success rate that we will have with our clients is focused on our relationship with them. Like literally, if we have a good relationship with the client, then everything else will fall into place because that trusting relationship is important.
It is.
And so I tell parents, if you don't know what to do, spend that time, that relationship with them, because that is more important than all the knowledge and all the skills you have in the world. You can have all the knowledge and you can have all the skills, and yet if you don't have that love, if you don't have that relationship, none of that's going to matter. And so it all starts with the relationship. And I was reading through this book that I really love. It talks about the fact that your child's behavior is often a sign of his trust and safety with you. And so when your child is acting up, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, our child can feel a sense of lack of trust with the relationship we have with the parent. And that's why it's important if you don't know what to do, just start with working on the relationship with the parent or with the child, because when they are closer to you and they trust you, that's when things can start to heal. That's when they can start to open up, and that's when they can begin to listen to what you're saying. But no, it is never too late. Even if with a high schooler, even with a college kid, it is never too late, because what kids need, as well as human beings need, is a place of love and grace and forgiveness. And that's why we have Christ. And that is why we want to present what Christ has done to us, to our kids.
Wow, that is so good, because you can read all the books in the world.
Exactly.
You can watch all the teaching online.
Exactly.
But like you said, if you don't start with that relationship, then that really doesn't help you much.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to what the scriptures teach: love others like you love yourself.
Wow.
How can you learn to love your child if you don't like who you are?
That's
so,
true.
Again, this all really reflects and starts with you. How are you? Do you like who you are? Are you living fulfilling the purpose that God has called you to be? And how is your anxiety? How is your heart? These are important questions that I think parents have to ask themselves, that I think will really help. Because from that moment on, if you like who you are, if your relationship with Christ is growing stronger, and you are healthy and you're taking care of yourself and you're confident in who you are as a person, a lot of these other things really will come natural.
That's good.
Because it's not just about skill.
But
it's about the heart and being able to be with that person in the presence.
That's true. That's great, Wesley. Thank you so much for coming by.
So glad to be here.
Bye.
So glad to